Okay, here we go. All right, Robert, I'm just going to invite you up here to speak. Here we go. Whoop, whoop. Hey, how's it going?
Not bad. How about you?
Glad to hear it. Honestly,
My,
pretty
my,
much the same. All right, so I think we both have these bots recording, so hopefully we will not have any audio issues like last time. All right, so yeah, I mean, more and more people will start to filter in as the talk goes on, but maybe if you could introduce yourself to people who might not know who you are, that would be a great way to start.
for sure. So I'm Robert. I've been programming since I was about 7, doing web dev and such since I was about 11. I've worked on several things, made a couple apps, worked at a couple companies, and yeah,
Cool. All right, so you're a software developer, right?
that's it.
Okay. And you also are the owner of the TypeScript Discord server, or like how are you involved with that?
Yeah, so I started it with a friend around late 2018 and have owned
Cool.
it ever since.
Huh. All right. Um, okay, so yeah, I mean, I guess we could just start this off by kind of um, discussing like what got you into all these things, because it seems like you have multiple interests between software development, community building. Although in this case, the community does kind of go hand in hand with the software development because it is TypeScript. So yeah, like what was there sort of an aha moment that got you started in these sorts of ventures?
Yeah, so I think programming was the start of all of it all. So I think the first real time I got into programming seriously was through Minecraft, and I think that's quite a common experience for a lot of people here. But making plugins and mods for my friends when I was 7, 8. Obviously, there were some smaller things before that, but what really got me excited about it was Minecraft, and I think that's shared with a lot of other people here.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of the people we've spoken to for other builder talks, like we'll talk about having gotten into things sort of via gaming. Um, so how exactly does development tie in with Minecraft? Like with mods and stuff? You said.
Yeah, exactly. So making mods for my friends, plugins, like just new experiences from the vanilla is what how it started.
Well, all right. All right. So that's how you got introduced to software development. Um, what I mean, looking at kind of your Twitter profile, you got involved with a couple startups, right? One of which being Subso, which you started with Scott Hyatt, another guy that we've spoken to. How did that transition from like sort of creating mods and plugins for Minecraft turn into like web development software startups?
Yeah, so my first, it all started with Node.js back when I was about 11. And it all started from making Discord bots. Uh, I would, at the start, I used to own Overwatch Discord servers before I started web development or anything, because I was quite into the game at the time. And I owned a server called The Watchers at the time. And I wanted to make bots for that did things that were bespoke to the community. But at the time, I didn't know how to make them. So I looked at some
Okay.
tutorials and I saw that, Node.js, Discord.js were the ways to do it. So I just kind of got into Node and that spiraled into Vue, which spiraled into React, which is why I'm up today.
Ah, okay. Um, Interesting. Yeah, actually, Discord bot was the first time that I sort of got involved with any sort of software projects or startups. I made this multi-purpose Discord bot with a friend who knew JavaScript. Um, so, all right, and TypeScript, if I'm not mistaken, can't you make TypeScript bots on Discord? Like, isn't there some sort of I know the most common ones are like JavaScript and Python, but I don't really know how it works specifically.
I mean, TypeScript is just an addition to JavaScript. So anything you can do in JavaScript, you can do in TypeScript. It just adds some nice features on top of it.
Oh,
So
okay.
you can make Discord bots in either. Yeah.
All right, cool. Um, all right. And so right now you're working on, I know you're working at Primer right now, and I want to get into that in a bit. Um, but I guess I do want to focus on things like sub.so. How did you meet like people like Scott Hyatt? Because I know that you're pretty well known in like these kinds of startup circles on Discord.
Yeah, so actually it all started through Twitter, which is where most of my things have come from. I originally met Alistair, who I think you've talked to before, on Twitter, talking about some JavaScript argument. I think it was to do with imports or something. And we connected on Discord and we started talking a bit. Then Alistair introduced me to Scott, and through that we started Subso. But it all just started on Twitter.
Oh, cool. All right. And so what was your role in Subso? You were a co-founder or how
Yeah,
like
yeah, we
okay.
co-founded it together, and I did a lot of the development.
Nice. Um all right. And so Subso is sort of like we spoke to Jamie Pine before. He was doing something called Notify. Is it from what I have seen it looks sort of similar
Yeah, so
or
Jamie originally started Notify doing what Subso does today, where it joins a bunch of social media feeds together, like Twitter, uh, Twitch, YouTube, all together into a single feed. And that's what Notify originally did. But he's switched the idea over, kind of pivoted into a creator fan interaction platform, which, is also very cool. But Scott and I
huh.
kind of missed what Notify used to be, so we wanted to make it ourselves. But there are definitely some overlaps between Notify and Subso.
Okay, cool. Um, and yeah, when Jamie closed up shop on that, um, I'm pretty sure I'm just gonna check Twitter right now. Yeah, I see that they. Oh, okay. Now he's working on Sub 2, so that's different. That's not Subso, right?
Yeah, but he actually
Okay.
owned Sub 2 while we started working on Subso, so it was always a bit of a joke how there was one character between the two
Okay.
competitors. But
Yeah.
yeah,
All right. All right. So yeah, I mean, you're really involved with software development stuff. How did the whole TypeScript server come to fruition? Were you working with the team behind TypeScript, or was it sort of just like you're a fan of the framework or the language or whatever it is? Sorry, I'm not a developer. And you just kind of went off on your own and did it.
yeah. So this is a whole story, and it started all back around late 2018. I was 11, and I said to my friend, oh, I don't see any Discord communities for TypeScript because I was looking to start something new because my Overwatch communities were kind of wrapping up. And I was, what could we make? And I was like, oh, there aren't any TypeScript servers. So we made one, started off very small. We did a couple posts on Reddit. And at the time, we were completely unaffiliated with any of the TypeScript team. They didn't even know about us. But it was quite an inactive small server. Um, uh, but it kind of sat like that for about a year and a half until around 2019, when this person called Author on the TypeScript team joined the server and started talking and interacting, and that definitely boosted the activity because there was a actual TypeScript team member in the
Ah,
server.
okay.
Um, but they wanted to. So it turns out Microsoft actually wanted to start their own TypeScript Discord server because they had used a platform called Gitter before. I'm not sure if anyone here has heard of it, but it's not great, and they wanted to switch over to something more robust. So they started. So they wanted a Discord server, but they didn't want to make their own, like manage it. So Auto joined and was like, hey guys, this is cool. We want to make this official, but we'll have to make some changes. So we're like,
Right.
okay, that's cool, obviously. So we're like, that's cool. It was quite strict. We had a talk with some Microsoft lawyers. I don't know how far I could go into that, but we figured out a way of making it official while keeping us as owners, and we talked about rules, keeping up with Microsoft's code of conduct, and eventually we turned it into something the Microsoft team could actually endorse. So this was around late 2019, very early 2020, before Corona or anything came around, and it became official, and they put a link to it on the TypeScript website on the community page, and that's when it really started skyrocketing.
That's
Our
crazy.
member flow went from around maybe 100 people per month to like 2,000. So
Jeez.
yeah, so we started seeing a lot more activity there, and it's ever since then it's been a lot of scaling and a lot of figuring out what's best. But yeah,
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, like as a community builder myself, that's kind of like a dream come true. You know, you build something as a fan of something, and then the actual official people behind it not only want to work with you, but they're okay with you having ownership and managing it, and then they plug it, which is crazy. Um, all right, so
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. Um, all right, I think Barracat wanted to say something.
Yeah. I had a question actually, more about because I know the TypeScript server has some like technical stuff and including like the bot. And I know it has some like functionality towards like the helper channels and all of that. So going more into that part, how do you guys create the bot? And since I know it's like a bit of a different system with the channels, and them opening up and closing and whatnot. So if you could like explain more about how that works, that would be really cool.
Yeah, for sure. So when we reached around 10,000 members, we started seeing an issue where we had two help channels, help one and help two, and those were becoming way overcrowded. People were asking questions over each other. People's questions were getting buried, meaning they weren't getting the help they wanted, and it was becoming a mess overall. So we decided that this really isn't working, and this is creating quite a bad experience for our members. So we were like, okay, what would a good solution to this be? And in the end, the Python Discord server, who I'm quite good with their owner, Joseph, they had a solution kind of similar to what we have now, where they had channels, and there were a bunch of channels, and you could claim a channel for your question, and you go through the question, a helper helps you. Then when you're done, the channel kind of gets recycled back into available channels. So we are like, okay, we can try this out, and we ended up building it ourselves in TypeScript, obviously, in our own bot, and it worked quite well. It took a bit of tweaking to get working properly and working well with our community, but it turned out to be a great solution for about a year and a half. And actually, only recently, about 2 weeks ago, we switched over to a new system which utilizes Discord threads, which means there isn't a mess of channels, and instead just a one channel with a bunch of threads, which has been working quite well, and we think we're going to keep.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good system, and like I've used it to myself, and it works really smooth. So yeah, that is very cool. Personally, since of course, like you and the I think his name was Dream. He made you guys created TypeScript Discord servers. So, what are your thoughts on just overall general TypeScript? And like maybe it compared to JavaScript, or like any recommendations if people should learn.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big advocate for TypeScript. I've used it for many years, and it's been a big part of my development career. But I love it personally. I mean, JavaScript's just a mess, full stop. Dynamically typed, barely any tooling around it for typing. There's stuff like JS doc, but it's nowhere close to where TypeScript is. So I think it's definitely, I don't think you should learn TypeScript without learning JavaScript. But once you have a grasp of JavaScript, going on to TypeScript is definitely a very good decision, and it brings it closer to a lot of other more typed languages, which I think is great.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a really good language, and I know a bunch of people here just in the server and just like outside of it enjoy it and use it. It does have a really good type system. So yeah, that's really cool. So going beyond that, just on startup space and you, I know you've built Subso and he worked a bit at Giggle too, and now Premiere. So before Subso, I guess, just starting off programming. What do you remember some of your very early projects that you've worked on, or early startups, I guess, before Subso?
Yeah, so before Subso, I worked for this company called Edge, which Scott was the CTO there, and Alistair worked there as well with me. So they hired me, and that was a great kind of first company experience. Obviously it didn't work out for us in the end personally, but it was a great way to like see how people worked. They get in the kind of environment like that. But before that, I'm trying to think of some. Obviously, there's a lot of Minecraft plugins. I made like dimensions, loads of stuff before that. But I think a lot of Discord bots as well. But I think Edge was the first real catapult into serious web development and actual products for users. Because before that, it was mostly just me hacking around, making stuff for my friends.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know even like Scott and Ali have also done stuff at Edge and done stuff with like Minecraft. And I guess, as you said earlier, that's a really popular place for all of these people to start with what they're doing. And yeah. Um, so I had a question, and it was mainly just for the audience specifically. I know a lot of people here might know of Premiere, have heard of it, but for those who don't, do you want to explain like a bit of what it does and like kind of the mission and what the end goal is?
For sure. So I think the kind of base of Primer is the idea that when you're starting off something young, like we've all started off programming young, having a pack of people around you, your age, that are passionate about the same thing is, infinitely beneficial. Like, I don't think I would have stuck with programming so long if I didn't have Scott, Ali, like other people my age who I was good friends with doing things together. So, for programming, obviously the barrier of entry is quite low. You just need a laptop, you just need a code editor. But for other things like microbiology or chemistry, the barrier of entry is a lot higher, and it's a lot harder to find other kids who are like passionate about the same thing, especially when you're a bit younger. So the idea of Primer, and we enable it via various means, is that it's a way of finding other kids your age who are passionate about the same thing you are, and helping you guys helping them connect and learn together and kind of have that joint experience, if that makes sense.
Okay, so is it comparable in any way to places like TKS, like the Knowledge Society, or um, how exactly are they? How are they connecting these kids?
Sure. So I think it's the most similar thing you can compare it to is a social media site. We have lots of different kind of means of connecting people, but we have these things called clubs. Like we may have the chemistry club or the microbiology club, for example, which anyone can join, anyone can contribute to. It's kind of like a Reddit board, but a bit more like focused, a bit more serious. And then we have these things called rooms as well, which are these live audio experiences where where kids can collaborate, and then sometimes we have like an adult there, kind of guiding conversation and guiding the learning. But it's a great way to let kids kind of collaborate together. It's all about communication.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. I hadn't heard about. Wait, okay, just to make sure, is it Premiere or Primer? How do you pronounce it?
It's Primer.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so I hadn't heard of Primer actually before I started looking into like what you were working on. So I was pretty pumped to discover it because I'm definitely interested in all that. Being the co-founder of BuilderGroop, which is a community for young people trying to learn all sorts of things. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So did Primer, how new is it? I know it's a startup, but like is it an open beta or how far along are they?
Sure. So it was started. There have been several phases to it. So it originally started as this company called Spark Learning back in around 2019. And then rebranded to Primer around early 2020. So it's been available in public beta since around, I want to say January 2020, but around the start of 2021 was when we quote unquote launched into a public kind of product, which anyone can sign up for, which is what it is now. So we're about a year and a half into it being public, and so far so good.
Awesome. And remind me when you joined?
Uh, actually joined only a couple months ago, so around September.
Cool. All right. Yeah. So, like, how does that hiring process go as a 15-year-old? I can't imagine you like on LinkedIn going through the sort of like normal process. Did you reach out to them? Did they reach out to you? How did that happen?
So originally, I reached out to the CEO, Ryan Delk, on Twitter through a cold DM in summer 2021, just saying, I love what you're doing. I think it's great. I resonate with the mission, basically. It was a bit longer than that, obviously. But he actually saw a tweet on my Twitter saying, I'm going to be in San Francisco next week. And he was like, oh, cool. He was like, cool, thanks. Want to come along to our office? So I actually went to their office. This is when I was still working on Subso, so I wasn't interested in working for them at the time. But I went along to their office, met the team there, worked a bit with them, and then went home. And nothing much happened because I was still working on Subso. But I started talking to Ryan again around late 2021 because we were talking about that when Subso was winding up and next steps. He was like, if you ever want to come to work for Primer, we'd love to have your perspective and your skills. So I was like, okay, and I joined. And obviously, I work on a kind of part-time basis, just doing hours here and there. But it's worked out quite well for us. So
Yeah, that's crazy. And are a lot of your coworkers the same age, or are you sort of an outlier in the company?
Obviously, it's a startup, so there aren't too many engineers and employees. But I think the next youngest person is this person called Lucas, who's taking a gap year right now. So there's no one else kind of my age, but most of the employees are quite young, but no one in their teens.
All right, cool. Okay, yes. I mean, speaking of gap years, you're dropping out of high school at the end of this year. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, the end of this academic year.
All right. Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty big decision. How, like, why are you taking this route? How did you get your parents to be okay with it? How did that happen?
Yeah, so that's quite a loaded question, but I think the kind of basis of the decision was, I believe, compounding is like a very important part of life, like compounding skills, compounding money, compounding property, whatever, like just getting more of something. And I kind of realized that if I'm at this point programming at this age, I have the opportunity to be, at the top of like programmers, like at the top, if I'm, where I am now today. And I want to be doing everything to compound that and to get there. So I kind of figured that doing, the next few years of high school, then university, is not going to help me get there. And if I want to get there, I need to be dedicating time to it. So that was basically the basis of the decision. Obviously, there are a lot of other smaller reasons, but that was the kind of big overarching one.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Um, and so I guess your parents were totally okay with that.
Oh, my parents are actually both very academic, so the kind
Oh
of the
boy.
first, yeah, they both took the very classical university route. So it took quite a bit of convincing.
Yeah.
I obviously the first time I went to them with the idea, they were like, absolutely not. But I chipped away at it over a couple of months. I got them on calls with some people in the industry who I respected. They discussed it, and I don't think they're still 100% like completely on board, but they can see why I'm doing it and see why I want to do it, and they support me in it. So
That's fantastic. Yeah. Um, and what made you decide to kind of drop out at the end of this year instead of at the end of high school? Did you just really feel like you needed to start the compounding process as soon as possible?
obviously I want to drop out as early as possible, because of compounding. But
Yeah.
but this is actually the earliest I can drop out, like legally. For me to drop out is at the end of this year. So
Ah,
that was the main driving force. But obviously I've been thinking about this for years and years. So this wasn't like a new idea for this year.
yeah, for sure. Um, and so, I mean, obviously, you're really in the heart of the startup world. Um, but do you think, I'm not someone who knows a lot about, software engineering or getting a job as a software engineer. Um, is it easier to get a job at a startup without these degrees than at maybe, say like Netflix or Amazon? Or is it sort of just across the board? You don't really have to worry about that, and it's more about your skill level.
Well, I'd say, there's definitely a mix. Like a lot of the larger companies like Amazon, Netflix, they're definitely going to favor having a degree a lot, mainly because they just get a lot of applications. So they need an easy way to filter out like the bad ones from the good ones. So a lot of the time, that's why they will require a degree. But I know a lot of friends who don't have degrees and have ended up at jobs at these companies because they've been referred. So I think a lot of the time when companies say they like require a degree, it's not because they actually require one. It's just because they need a filter to filter out a lot of spam submissions. But I do
Yeah.
think that obviously having a degree is helpful in some cases, especially at these larger companies, as I said. But honestly, at most startups I've seen nowadays, it's not even something that's discussed. It's just what about
Yeah.
what you can do and what you've done in the past.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense, especially considering you had the connection directly to the CEO. So you got to bypass that filter. The filter didn't mean much in your situation.
Exactly, and I still
Um,
I still had to go through the whole interview process. I didn't just get right into the job. But especially Primer doesn't have anything on their applications about degrees because it's a very like non-classical focused company. So
yeah, for sure. All right, now I know. I actually I'm seeing Ariman ask a question here. He's wondering how Primer got their handle on Twitter because obviously Primer's a pretty good name.
yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure 100% of the answer, but I do know that we had at with Primer for a while, and we only got at Primer a couple months ago, I think. But I think it was connections and a bit of money. I think that's the honest answer.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Now, I just going back to the community thing. With discord.gg/TypeScript. What are you like? What's your involvement on sort of a daily or weekly basis with the community? And what are your sort of core principles when it comes to community building?
Sure. So I think one of the biggest things I always think about with community building, and this may seem obvious, but I see it again and again that people don't think about, is you need to be thinking about the experience for your users, not getting more users. I've talked to Barrica about this before, actually. But one of the main things you need to be doing, you always need to be, when you're doing something, you need to think, is this going to be better for my current members? Because if your current members don't like the server, they're not going to be inclined to invite other people. And if new people come to your server and the current members aren't active, aren't enjoying the server, they aren't either. So I think one of the main things you need to think about is how do I make the server better for the people who are here already? And then once you make it good for them, the natural flow of new people coming will come, and those people will be a lot more engaged than if you focused on just getting new members. But day-to-day wise, for the TypeScript server, obviously I read a lot of the messages, I join in all conversations, but mainly I manage overarching decisions, like changes to the bot and changes to rules, etc., new channels, instead of just the finicky moderation, because we have a moderation team and they do a very good job. So normally I don't do a lot of that, but I do spend probably at least 30 minutes a day on the server, an hour a day, depending on how much time I have managing it.
Yeah, I mean that's fantastic. I completely agree with what you're saying. Figuring out how to make the situation for current members better, and focusing less on kind of advertising and stuff like that. Providing value is definitely kind of the top priority, or it should be. All right, so I guess I would want to know what sort of what are your future plans? Are you happy working at Primer? Are you still wanting to kind of go off and start your own startup? What's the future looking like for you?
Yeah, so the idea is when I drop out, I'm not dropping out to do something I could do, or I want to take advantage of the stuff I would get from dropping out. So I don't want to drop out to purely work for someone else. That's not the plan anyway. I'm going to continue working for Primer or another company full time, and on the side, I'm going to experiment with a lot of ideas, kind of work on things and see what sticks. But I don't want to just work for Primer or another place when I drop out. I want to eventually start something myself. But for now, when I drop out, I am going to work for someone else here.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's a really good goal. But yeah, I actually had a question. So when you decided to join Primer, and I'm not sure if you mentioned this a bit earlier, but there are obviously a lot of startups out there. So, what made you choose like Primer? Were you interested in like what they were doing? Were you interested? Was it like connection based? Was it like I'm just kind of interested like why you chose Primer.
Um, so I think I definitely resonate with their mission quite a bit. They're there to connect kids who are passionate about things with other kids, and I know from first-hand experience that having peers around you your age who are passionate about the same things is, monumental for your progress. So I definitely resonated with their mission quite a bit, and I love the team there as well. They have very nice offices and just general good vibes. So I was like, might as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it kind of aligns since Primer is focusing towards younger people, and someone that's young working for them too. That's really it's it's good to have it like that. But yeah. So I actually had a question, another question, about just school and dropping out. So as you know, like there are a bunch of companies if you do plan to apply to another one besides Primer in the future. And as you mentioned earlier, like these companies might, like a degree might come in these like conversations. So if, for example, do you have like a fallback plan in case things don't go as smooth as you want them to go?
Yeah, so I mean, there's always the option of going back to school. Obviously that's not what I want to do, but that is always something I can do. And worst case scenario, I guess that is what I do. But I don't think it's actually going to be that big of an issue because the industry is, trending a lot towards what you have done, not what degree you have on a piece of paper. But
Yeah,
hopefully I won't have to return to school. But it is always an option for me, and it is always a fallback. So
yeah, makes sense. And I know like a lot of startups, even like nowadays, like it's just purely based off of experience and just what you've built, and not more towards like school and stuff like that. So I guess
exactly.
still you have like an easier time, if you do plan to work at another startup. But yeah, um, and I know Ari had a question, that he
Yeah.
wanted to, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, something that I kind of have trouble with, just working in this kind of space, is burnout and sort of like time management. So I guess I was wondering to, how do you handle burnout? How do you manage your time and your schedule? And is that something you struggle with, or, um, yeah, how do you manage that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've definitely struggled with burnout in the past. It's been a very big issue for me, even recently. But I think one of the biggest things that you can do with burnout, honestly, is just keep going. Like, I hate how cliche it sounds, but the thing that sets you apart from other people is how well you can perform in times when you don't want to be working. And it applies to other things as well. But just when you're burnt out, obviously it's good to take time away. I play sports quite a bit. I go to the gym quite a bit, so that's a great way to like kind of separate your mind from programming for a little bit. But I think mostly, honestly, you just need to keep going because even if you hate what you're doing the same day, you just keep going. You wake up the next morning. A lot of the time, I find I'm proud of myself for going the previous day, and obviously that's not going to work for everyone. For some people, they just do have to take a break for a week or something. And I have taken breaks for weeks, and it's helped a lot. But a lot of the time, you just have to power through it because it will be okay in the end, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
I've experienced a ton of burnouts too, and I do agree. And I know you've mentioned gym somewhere, so that brings me to my next question actually. As you know, you've released an app called Uberlast. So would you like to explain how that worked, and like the just idea where you got it from, and yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So the main reason I wanted to make Uberlast was to get back in the swing of mobile development because before Uberlast, the last thing I did was Subso. That was a couple months ago when I properly worked with React Native. So I wanted to get back into the swing of developing for mobile, and I thought what would be better than to build an app for a problem I actually have. So in the gym, there's this concept called progressive overload, where you put like more tension on your muscle each time you go. Like you add a little bit of weight, or you do a couple more reps each time, so your muscle keeps having to like grow and grow. Obviously, it's a bit more complicated than that, but that's the TDR. But what Uberlast does is it helps you manage it. So you just put in how many reps you're able to do with what weight and what lift, and it gives you recommendations for what to do the next session to always make sure you're doing a bit more than the previous one.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it looks really good, like the UI. How long did it take you to build it?
Uh, Honestly, a weekend to get a version which I could use and I could work with. It was like 3-4 days. Obviously, to get it onto the App Store took a bit longer because you have all the art or the privacy. But the actual version of the app just a couple of days because it's such a simplistic app. There's no server, everything's just stored locally. So yeah,
Very cool. So it's in React Native. Sorry, React Native. I'm assuming.
yeah, that's right.
So, do you prefer working like mobile, web, or like I guess web front end or back end? Like, what do you prefer working
Or
on?
I mean, I enjoy working on all three, and I've built apps which have used all three before. But I think it depends what day you ask me on, because sometimes I'll be infuriated with stupid React Native errors, and other days I'll be infuriated with responsiveness. But I think overall I enjoy working on mobile or over web specifically, just because there's a lot less to deal with. You're not having to deal with loads of browsers, not having to deal with loads of screen sizes. Obviously, you still have to deal with different phones like Android, iOS, but I found a lot of the time it's easier, and it's nice being able to use it actually on your phone, and
Yeah,
walk around with the app in your pocket. So I'd say I enjoy mobile a lot more over web, but obviously I enjoy backend a lot as well. And yeah,
yeah, very very cool. And yeah, React Native seems awesome, just like mobile development in general. I haven't gotten into it yet, but it seems something really fun to do. So one last question that I had just about Uberlast was, is it going on Android?
yeah, I have a couple Android friends, and I've made APKs for them. It works. Cody, Lusky, who's listening in right now, actually did a lot of the Android work for Uberlast. It's a bit of effort to get it on the Play Store, but I will get around to it eventually. And it's definitely been great making an app which both iOS and Android users can use.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty cool. And I can definitely imagine, like, as a developer, being able to just whip out your phone and have that thing that you've been working on just right there must be pretty unique.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I guess, do you have any tips on starting a software startup?
Oh, probably not the best person to ask because I haven't done it too many times, but I'd say definitely couple big things. You want to be focused on the product a lot. Obviously, you need to validate the idea, but I wouldn't spend loads of time making a landing or making Twitter profiles. Like you just need to build, and then stay quiet for a while. And then once you have a product which works, then you can start massively advertising and putting it on your Twitter. Because I think for a while, if you just overhype and underdeliver, you don't you're not going to not people aren't going to like it. But if you overdeliver and underhype, it's going to create a lot more happiness for your users.
Yeah, for sure. I think Scott Hyatt actually has a pretty similar,
Yeah, we've we've
way of
talked
doing things.
we've talked about this quite a bit before.
Yeah, and I mean, based off of the fact that you got that fitness app out in just what did you say, 2 days?
Yeah, 3-4 days.
Yeah, I mean that's insane. So there must be some merit to it. All right, so I guess we could go on to the Q&A now. There are lots of questions for you here in this thread. All right, let's take a look. All right, so first question is from Comet, and he's asking, how was it to get a job as a software engineer at the age of 15? And how did your relatives and friends feel about it?
Yeah, so I think I've talked a lot about how I got it before, so I don't think I need to go over that again. But
For
the
sure.
reaction from the people around me, I think obviously my friends find it quite cool. I don't know how much of it is the money making wise and how much of it is the programming, probably a bit more of the first. But my friends obviously support me in it and find it quite cool. Family wise, obviously they support me as well. But I think at the start at least there was a lot of, are you growing up too fast? Are you sure you want to be working at this age? Because you have your whole life to make money, which I think is a very valid perspective and definitely something I've thought about before. But I think I kind of just decided that I do want to be doing this and this is where I want to go. So, but that was definitely a good point from them, and I think it should be considered when taking a job at this age.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right. Alefa asks, What are some tips to create a startup in school?
I think honestly, it's not too different from creating a startup anywhere else. Just work your ass off and keep your head down. Don't flex about it too much. Just go to school, do your work, get home, work on your startup, repeat, and then you'll get there at the end.
For sure. All right, that answer might actually sort of apply to this next question. You'll let me know. Ollie asks, what motivated you to start programming, and do you have any tips for people who want to become software engineers?
Sorry, the wind outside. You've probably heard about the storm in England. Let me close my window 1 second.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, so what motivated me to start? Honestly, I can't remember. It was a while ago. I mean, I talked about Minecraft and stuff, but I don't know what kept me motivated. I think I just kind of kept making stuff. And there were definitely periods. Like, I remember there was this one summer where all I did was play this game called Ark Survival Evolved. And that was when I was a lot less. That was when I was a lot less serious about programming. But I racked up a lot of time on that, and I basically never wrote code at that time. But I did a lot of Roblox as well, and I think just being able to make stuff which your friends could use is massive, especially at the start.
Yeah,
Tips wise,
for sure.
tips wise for starting programming is you just need to make stuff. Like, it doesn't matter how good the code is. It doesn't matter if you don't think you're good enough. Like, just set your mind to a project and just see how far you can go with it. Because you can watch as many videos, you can read as many books as you want. But if you're not able to, write the code and actually get practice in, then you're not going to go anywhere. So just all about practice. And it's going to take time, and it is hard. But, if you just make stuff, you'll get there.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean that's fantastic advice. All right, here's a sort of a not so serious one. Scott asks, "Who is your favorite person with the last name Hyatt?"
That's got to be Anna Hyatt. Scott's mother's a very lovely lady. Talked to her a couple
Okay.
times, and yeah.
Yep, saw
Anna.
that one coming. Okay. And Cody asks, "How much do you bench and deadlift?"
I actually hit a bench PR yesterday. 90 kilograms is my bench. Deadlift, I haven't gone for a 1 rep max in a while, but my working set's around 120 kilograms. So do what you
Damn.
want with that information.
All right. Well, if anyone else has Q&A questions to put in the thread, it's just under the events channel. I see someone typing, but I don't know if they're typing anything serious. All right, here we go. How would you plan a roadmap for someone new to web development?
I think honestly, like, road mapping out learning isn't such a good idea. Like, obviously you can think about, at what stage do I want to be able to make something. But I think honestly, like, saying this month I'm going to do React, this month I'm going to do TypeScript, I don't think that's such a good idea to do. I think you should just set your mind to an end goal. Like, I want to make an app, or I want to make this website, or I want to be able to make this game, and just, see what you need to learn to get there, and just, do it at your own pace. And, if it takes you a bit longer to learn something than another thing, then, so be it. I don't think it's so good to, like, timetable out your learning and just kind of just go for it, and, you'll get there.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. I kind of just got myself interested, at least, in HTML and CSS, just deciding to make myself like a personal portfolio site. And I mean, I think it was super efficient because I was trying like YouTube videos and online courses. So yeah, I can say that is good advice.
For sure.
All right. So Robert, it was really nice having you on. It's just you're doing lots of crazy stuff just being 15. So
Thank you.
yeah, I hope we can have another talk maybe in a year or two, and you'll be the CEO of some crazy startup or something.
Hopefully. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
It was
Yeah,
great
of
having
course.
you.
All right. See ya.